Okay, hey, let's get started. Okay, I'm just sharing the link with the community and then we can start.
Sure.
Okay, so we're about to start. Hello, everyone. Today I'm super excited. Excited because today we are about to have the much awaited conversation. We have an amazing speaker here who is going to share her journey with all of us. Our special guest tonight is Radhika Gupta, who is also known as the girl with the broken neck. But she has a lot more to her name. She is the CEO of Edelweiss Asset Management. She has set up India's first domestic hedge fund, and she is also the only woman head of big asset managers in India. She was recently honored by Business Today by naming her the 30 most powerful women in India. So as you listen to her, you will learn what is it like to be a female authoritative figure, what is the power of convincing, how to overcome the fear of rejection, and what has helped her set herself aside from the normal people. She is a storyteller, she is passionate, and she has a flair of materializing what she believes in. So let's hear from Radhika on how to be a boss lady in Asian culture, where stigmas against a brown lady are strongly embedded in the Asian mindset, which go unquestioned by most. So hi Radhika.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. It's totally our pleasure. Thank you for taking out time for us. So how are you holding up in these hard times?
So I was struggling with it, I have to confess. So this is very new for me. I am like the office type of person, and I love going to my cabin. It's a wonderful place. I love dressing up formally in sari. I wear a sari to work every day, which is how you would probably see me photographed. And I do my meetings, and I travel 3 days a week because I have offices all over India. And now I'm suddenly stuck at home, and I'm doing this with you, wearing pajamas and not looking so formal and sitting at home. So it's a little hard for me. I'm going to confess. The first week was kind of tough. But now I'm learning, and I'm kind of really excited in some sense. A friend of mine told me he's retired, and he told me for the first time in his life he's super envious of me. And I asked him why. And he said, because this experience of leading a team in a situation like this is just something awesome that you'll remember. There's this notion of sort of peacetime CEO and wartime CEO, and I think they're very different. And I think being a leader and managing a team under these circumstances is just teaching me something new every day. And it's probably something no training or manual or conference would have taught me. So that's super cool. And I'm also getting to, I used to run a restaurant in college and I love to cook. And obviously, because of my work, I haven't had time to cook for years. And now I cook every meal with my cook, and that's a lot of fun because every meal is an event in my house, and it's pretty fun, I have to say.
So you're learning home management and leadership management at the same time.
At the same time, yeah, and I'm not sure if my house help is very happy with me doing so much home management because we're competing for the role of CEO of the house now. So I'm not sure if he's very happy, but I'm really enjoying this.
Okay, so we'll go segment by segment as in a chronological order, starting from when you were very young. So, what were you like as a student? How was your childhood like? Tell us a little about yourself.
So my childhood at that point in time seemed very chaotic. Now I feel like looking back, it was probably a very lucky childhood. My father was a diplomat with the Indian government. He was in the Indian Foreign Service. I was born in Pakistan, as some of you may know, and I've lived in multiple countries across the world. And the rule the government had was that he had to move every 3 years, and They also have this rule that if you've lived in a good country for 3 years, then the next country you get is a really bad country. Life evens out. And so we lived in Europe, we lived in Italy, and we lived in Denmark. But I also did some schooling in Nigeria, and I did some in Pakistan, some in New York, some in Delhi. So it was very nice. We moved around every 3 years. The problem with that, though, is you didn't make very good friends. I mean, there was no Facebook at that time, and you really don't get that much mail that comes to Nigeria. I mean, snail mail doesn't really happen. And so you don't really have very many childhood friends. I mean, I don't have school friends, but we were very bonded as a family. That I think was the good part. The other thing is that you don't get time to develop hobbies. And some of the countries we lived in, like Nigeria, is like, I mean, this my current situation reminds me of Nigeria because Nigeria was like living in a state of semi-lockdown. Security was pretty poor. You only went to school and came back. There were really no theaters or malls or things to go to. So it was school and home, and that was basically it. So it was, so this reminds me of semi-lockdown life actually. So that's how it was. I was a very shy person. I hated people. And I was just a good student. That's about it. I didn't have any talent for sports or anything musical. So that was basically me, like a very shy, traditional Asian kid who was also very insecure about how I looked. Because I used to look, I mean, I don't know if I look great now, but I used to look horrible as a kid. So I was also very insecure about that.
So you've had your fair share of interacting with different cultures, and you've had your fair share of change. So wasn't coming back to India and settling over here a bit of a daunting and an overwhelming decision?
India, I moved from New York to India. People were like, "Oh, how are you going to live in Bombay? It's going to be so tough and it's so dirty and all that stuff that starts and it's so polluted." And I was like, "Dude, I've lived in Nigeria. I mean, there are no traffic lights there, and you fear for life." So I am very adaptable as it comes to countries. What was tough for me actually was the transition from going from working from someone to running my own business, because I don't come from a business family. As I told you, my dad is in government, and I started our business when I was 24. And I think Asian culture in general is not very kind to young people who are trying to do something. I call it you need to have the old bald guy on the board. So being a young woman in India and trying to start business, I think that was more daunting than the shift from US to Bombay. It was easy.
Okay, that's an interesting insight. Like usually people are moving out, and you were coming back, so that was something that I was really interested
I
in.
never lived in India, so I have no notion of home. For me, wherever my family is, and I have family in India, and wherever I can make friends, and I do make friends, and wherever my work keeps me happy, for me that's home. Because I have moved around so much, I have no notion of home. I can be home anywhere.
That's a good thing. So talking about your undergrad and when you were just figuring out what you wanted to do with your life, when did you think that finance was your thing?
So I was not one of those kids, like most people are like me actually, who loved finance and who grew up knowing that I wanted to do finance. I don't think most of us have an idea of what we want to do. I think some kids do at college. I mean, there are kids I met at college who were like, when I graduate 4 years later, I want to work for Morgan Stanley in San Francisco in investment banking in the technology division. I was not that kid. I had no idea. And perhaps it was my background. I actually started after I graduated with consulting, and that was nice. I worked for McKinsey. Wharton is a business school, so you're also surrounded by finance. And after McKinsey, I decided to join a hedge fund. I mean, I got the opportunity, and I did. And it's not what attracted me to finance. Finance, I think that's most interesting. I like this career. One of my bosses in the US told me that this is a job where you're learning every day. And I asked him why, and he said, either you're making money every day, which nobody obviously does, or you're learning something every day. And I think that's what finance is. It's dynamic and it's changing and it's high stress and it's high energy, but it keeps you on your toes. I mean, this is not a career you can get bored in. It's a career that can make you very stressed out, and it periodically does. But it's always teaching you something new every day. And I'm a very impatient person by personality, so I think that works for me.
So You started working for McKinsey as soon as you graduated, but before that, you had your very low time. You've talked about it on your speaker sessions with on other platforms. So tell us more about that. There's this certain expectation when you graduate and you think that you're gonna make it because everybody gets a job, right? But what were your circumstances and what did you feel at that time?
So, I mean, everybody thinks, and when you go to the US and you go, I was a scholar, I was a financial aid candidate, and that was pretty rare at that time. And I was also a good student at Wharton. I mean, I was at one of the most prestigious programs at the school, and I was doing really, really well. And so you just think that the job market is going to be a breeze. And I had interned at Microsoft, and I remember applying to consulting firms. And I was there, and most people around told me, you're a short, you're just going to get in, etc., etc. And I've talked about this, but I applied to all 8 firms that came to campus, and I was rejected outright by the first 7. And that was a pretty hard feeling because, I mean, I knew academically I was there. And I mean, I still wonder, and I look back and I wonder why. Uh, I was probably a very shy kid at that point in time. I grew up with a lot of insecurities about how I looked and various things that young girls grow up with. And I've talked about this. I think by the 7th rejection, I was so irritated and so upset. Partly that I had been rejected, and partly that people who I thought were less academically qualified than me had got those jobs. That I did what I did, which is try to jump off the 19th floor of a window and ended up going to a mental asylum or a mental health hospital at Penn for a day, and I escaped that. But I went through that period before I got that job at McKinsey, and I think for me, getting that job at McKinsey and getting it for the reason I did, which was essentially my hobby of playing bridge that I had learned in my lockdown days, taught me a lot about how you don't have to try, you don't have to be what everyone else is, and campus environments condition you to be a certain kind of person, but you really don't have to be that person because people are ultimately looking for what's different. I mean, even today, everyone's asking you what's different about you, and we don't grow up, especially in Asian culture, celebrating those differences. And I think McKinsey taught me to do that.
So, um, when you went in there and she asked you about Bridge, like you're the CEO, the interview you had with the CEO, and she asked you about Bridge. What was that feeling like? You would have been like, oh, nobody knows about Bridge, and why is she asking me about Bridge?
Well,
Did you
I have to
actually mention
answer.
it on
I
your
have to
resume?
answer. Well, first I thought it was a cruel joke. I was like, okay, she's making fun of me. Because bridge was a tiny line item on my resume. And then maybe I thought that since she's going to reject me outright, she's just doing this to pass time. And then I realized that that conversation, I mean, usually interviews are 40 odd minutes, it was going on and on. And I realized she knows the game. So then she kind of revealed that she was a tournament level bridge player. And then, even at the end of the conversation, I was like, maybe she's just done this to pass time with me since she intends to reject me because she didn't ask me anything really technical. And I think, that's also a function of insecurity because you're so convinced that you're going to be rejected that you're just going through that conversation thinking, okay, let me just get over with this until you got the outcome that you did. It's hilarious.
So when you were coming out and when you were like convinced that you're totally rejected, and when you got the call back from the CEO that, and then when she called you upstairs, how did you manage from there? What was that resolve that you developed at that point?
Also, I was super happy after asking her why I got the job. You know, the job because you're different and unique. So I was trying to be composed then, but I remember coming down back after I had got that, and I called my boyfriend, who's my husband now, and I told him I've got this job, and I remember screaming on the roads of Boston, being like, "I got a job at McKinsey! I got a job at McKinsey!" It was a life-changing moment because it happened after so much rejection.
So you started working at McKinsey and then you made the next big jump to the AQR Capital that's associated with Wall Street. How was that experience? Why did you switch? And after that, when did you finally decide that you want to make your own startup?
So the experience was great. Again, it's interesting. I joined Wall Street in 2006, 5, 6. which was a great time to be on Wall Street. We saw some really nice highs on Wall Street. I also got to see 2008 early in my career, and as we're going through everything that we're going through in markets now, references to the time in 2008. I'm really glad. I'm so blessed I saw 2008 because it makes going through what I'm seeing in capital markets much easier now. We saw years of great bonuses and excess of Wall Street. Like we would go to recruit on campus and we would go in limousines. It was like that. And then we saw 2008 where we saw colleagues of ours being fired in front of our own eyes. We saw people who had worked for firms for 4 or 5 years being fired in 3, 4 minutes. And you realize how brutal life can be and how extreme this profession can be. And that's something I always tell new people who enter finance because I didn't know this. When you think of finance, you think of it as a very glamorous career. You think of all the money, you think of all the shows, you think of what they show you in movies. And then you see this side of financial services, and I think some people are seeing it for the first time now. But I'm so grateful I saw that side, and it really, really shaped me as an individual and as a leader. It taught me never to let the excess go to my head. Why we decided to move back to India, I have no idea. I was sitting in 2008 and 9. We'd actually survived the layoffs, both me and my husband. And we just decided that we wanted to come back home and do something. You could have been great and just done this corporate career, but they say that young blood is hungry and foolish, and I think that's what I was. And we just decided to come back. For me, it was really random because I had never lived in India, and I was 24. So to come back to a country you've never lived in and a culture you haven't grown up in, and want to start a business, but that I think I'm an impatient person. I think my father's background has made me an impatient person, and there's a constant desire to just keep trying new things, and that's what it is.
So, it was, as we all know, it was the recession period, right? And that is when you decided that you wanted to do this. What gave you that courage that it would work out at that point of time?
I actually didn't know that it would work out. I didn't think it would work out, but one thing I did think was what was plan B. And I thought if this fails, I'm 24, I can go back to business school. And that was what it was. And I always tell people is that, you can take risks if you have a reasonable plan B in mind. So that I don't, and the other good thing that worked for us is that through 2005 and 6 and 7, and this is something I tell young women all the time, I had done a good job of saving money. So when I started Forefront Capital, I didn't need to ask anyone for money. I didn't need to ask my father or husband or anyone. I could just do it. So I had that at the back of my mind, and I always had this plan B.
So during the, when you start, there are a lot of things that young entrepreneurs do not know because they do not have that experience. It's another thing to work under somebody, and it's another thing to lay the plan out, and then initiating all that, and then finding the right people to work for you, to work with you, to work as a team. How did you manage all that? You were a young lady. According to the Asian culture, all I can think that all the other people were thinking, oh, she's so young and she's talking about finance, she's talking about money, is it really her thing? So what did you face at that point of time? How did you make it work?
There's so many stories about this. I remember my other two partners were men, and I remember going to meet a broker on Dalal Street in Mumbai. And you know how you go out and you give people your hand to shake. And so my partners, this broker shakes both my partners. And I was not wearing a skirt because I knew it was India. I was wearing trousers and a shirt, and he doesn't shake my hand. He does like this big namaste to me. And I was like, why am I getting such differential treatment? And there were all these weird kind of stories. It's so true, sir, that when you work for a firm, you're exposed to a very small part of how a company actually runs. And I suddenly realized that I was going to become the legal person, and I was going to become the sales person, and I was going to become the marketing person. So I was the person who actually registered a company income tax certificate in India. I got the company filed. I became like the quasi lawyer. I also, if some of you are accountants, I was the CA of the company. So I would do the voucher entry of the company because we couldn't afford to hire an accountant. We hired one a year later. He told me I was horrible at doing voucher entries. And our auditor said if we did not get a proper accountant, then he would resign. So that's why we hired an accounting guy who still works with me. So I learned a lot during that period, and I'm so grateful. I also was the one managing the pantry. I was the head of HR. I learned very different things. Like I learned how to I was a very shy person, and someone gave me this feedback that listen, you need to market and you have no budget. So they said there are all these like CNBC kind of shows, and you can show up on these shows and talk about your company and talk about stocks. And if people think a person is coming on TV, they assume they're reasonably successful. So I would go to LinkedIn and I would find journalists and I would say, listen, I want to show up on your TV channel. And I would do that. And I turned out to be reasonably articulate on TV. So I became very popular on for the first few clients of the company. So I've done a lot of random things in those first 2 years.
So you just told us that you were a shy person in the beginning and then you were on your way to become a CEO. How did you manage people management, especially?
I have learned it on the job, and it's a little bit of a unique situation because I was telling a friend this today that the CEO role in a mutual fund company is very vast. You have so I have about 200 people reporting to me. Everybody who reports to me now is older than me. Some of them are as old as 50, 55. Some of them maybe 35, 36, and you have the whole range of people reporting into you. There are more serious investment professionals, and then there are younger marketing guys, and there are operations guys who come from a very different background, and then there are sales guys, and they're also in 23 different cities in India with different cultures. So I'm learning to manage on the job. One of the things that I think is that leadership is very much a contact sport. I don't believe in the model that a CEO sits in the corner office and formulates strategy in a boardroom and all that. I think you need to be there with your team, laughing with them, trying with them. I travel usually in normal times 3 days a week. I try to be very connected with my team. In fact, even in this period of lockdown, I'm super busy because every day I'm doing connect sessions with 10 members of the team. And I'm asking them how their life is at home and how work is. And we're doing singing and we're telling jokes. And that's how I'm trying to stay connected to the team. I mean, I run a people business, so it is all people.
So what is that one point when you think that, there are times when you're trying to negotiate, right? There you have your times when you pitch and you make pitches, you want yourself to be heard. But it is, of course, a notion that, a woman isn't going to pitch, maybe a man is going to come in and do the job. So how do you make your position, and what would you advise other people who are trying to go in? What are the tricks and tips that you use to be heard?
So I'm glad you asked me this question because it is hard to be heard, and I struggle with it today. I hate the generalization, but I think sometimes I often sit in meetings full of men, and I think women struggle in general to be heard in meetings. What I have done is I'm not the kind of person who can get into one of these slugfests in a meeting. I mean, one person speaking over each other. I'm a diplomat's daughter, so I really struggle with that. If I have a point, I try to prepare really well in advance with a few of the key things I want to say. And even if I get one opportunity to speak in a meeting, I make sure I'm very articulate in that. I also have, over the last 2, 3 years, really learned to like public speaking. I've trained a little bit in public speaking. So I use one-to-many conversations to sort of make my point felt. And I think I'm fairly convincing there. I love to tell stories. So I use that a lot in my speaking. And I think that somehow works for me.
So you talked about looking for the opportunity and then making the point. So how do you ask for opportunities, and how do you overcome the fear of rejection?
So I think it's very important for women to go out and ask. And again, I hate to generalize, but I don't think women do it enough. I'm going to tell you a small example. Some of you may remember that time when, Donald Trump and Narendra Modi met. Modi had gone to Texas, and there was this big event that they were doing in the US. It was called Howdy Modi. And in Texas, and there were a bunch of dancers, etc. So the event gets over, and Modi and Trump are walking back, And as they're walking back, there's a line of people waiting to greet them. And there's a bunch of women who are folk dancers dressed in Indian folk outfits. And then there's a little young boy in a white outfit. Now, Modi and Trump are walking, and they walk past these folk dancers, and they're just watching. And then this little boy goes to Donald Trump and taps him on his shoulder and says, "Can I take a selfie with you?" And he asked, and guess what? And I asked, and all these young women are like, "I can't believe he asked." And my point is, until you ask, you're not going to get. So the reason when I was kind of doing a bunch of work at Edelweiss, I knew they were looking for a new CEO, and I felt I had all the qualifications for it, and yet I knew that they were going to hire someone else for the role. So I actually went up to my boss and said, "But why can't it be me?" And he was like, "But I've never thought of you that way." Um, and it's probably true. He had never thought of me that way. He said, "This is a retail business in just small towns in India and wearing a sari, and you come from this overseas background. I just can't see you that way." And I was like, "But I can do it if you just give me a chance." And I think it's a very important thing that, remember, until you don't ask, nobody knows that you want to do this. Why should someone be sitting and saying, "Oh, Sachal or Radhika want to do this and they're capable"? You have to put your hand up. And unfortunately, sometimes you get rejected. I wanted to do something, outside of work yesterday, something big and ambitious, and I tweeted about this, and I actually asked, and I got told no, and that I'm asking for something that's way beyond my pay yesterday, and I felt pretty crappy about it. But then I told myself I'm not going to stop asking. So I think you should ask, and many times you'll get no's, but regardless of who you are. But sometimes you'll get yeses, and that yes can change your life.
So you've said yes to the yeses, and that's what brought you here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I ask for a lot of things. Sometimes I get told yes, and I say yes to the yes. Sometimes I get told no, and I live to fight another day and ask again.
So let's talk about success. What's your definition of success? What are the key metrics that you measure from? Is it about money, power, fame, family? How do you divide that in your routine? How do you maintain that balance?
It's changed, to be honest. It's about, I think success is very individual. And it's about a balance of things. It's not just about money, and it's not just about fame, and it's not just about, I don't believe in this work-life balance and so on. I believe that life should be harmonious. A reasonably happy family life. I don't have kids, but I'm very happy married. I have my parents and in-laws, and I get to spend time with them. Uh, I'm happy with work and what I'm doing at work. I feel like I enjoy what I do, and I have a hobby that is speaking, that allows me to speak and influence lives. And for me, I think as I'm growing older, impacting people's lives positively is probably the thing that gives me the most happiness. So whether it's my team, or whether it's the clients I work with, or whether it's people I interact with in speaking or things like this, I think impacting people's life positively is now what success is looking to me. This may change 5 years later. I don't know.
So far, what are you really proud of? Of all the things you've done so far, you've had your rejections, you've had your acceptances. What are you really proud of?
And it's too early to say. I'm young. I'm happy that I've been able to move around so much and make a home for myself in India. It's not a place I've lived in, and I'm happy I've been able to sort of transition. So what I like about my resume, if I look at it, is that I've got lots of different experiences. I've worked for a mid-sized firm, AQR. I've worked for a small company, Forefront, which I started. I worked for an Indian company. I recently, last year, did a large project with Government of India. So I've got a really nice range of experiences. So that's nice. I'm happy that I was one of those kids who never really had any kind of talent. So like, I can't sing to save my life. I can't dance. I can't paint. I'm terrible at sports, but I like to write, and I like to express myself, and I like to speak. Um, and I've been able speaking is a hobby. I've probably done about 200 pieces of speaking over the last 2 years, which is quite a bit. Through that, I'm also able to give back to society, a little bit to charity. So I'm happy I've been able to sort of do the things I like. And I'm most happy that I've gone from someone who's shy to someone who's now reasonably more confident about myself. I mean, I have my insecurities and I have my bad days, but I'm a far more confident person than I was growing up as a teenager or even as a 21, 22-year-old.
So this combined with how you're taking your work, how you're being a boss lady in Asia, right? There must have been like highs and lows. There's no such thing as going a straight high. So when you're like in your darkest moments, how do you get out of it? What motivates you to get out of bed and have that cup of coffee and starting over again?
Moments happen. I mean, I keep telling my team there's one day in every month where I'm like, I want to quit what I'm doing. And I just totally okay for women to cry. I mean, you can't cry in your office. Like, but you come home crying and you're like, I just hate it's all falling apart. Nothing's going to happen. I think to me it happens once a month. I mean, I'm a very sensitive person. And I just get over it the next day. I have a really low moment. I start looking back at my 5-year journey. Okay, maybe I haven't done so badly over the last 5 years. I'm very active on social media, so a lot of people write me this sweet. Like I was having a really horrible day yesterday, and someone's daughter had seen one of my talks, and she wrote a handwritten summary of that talk and sent it to me, and I have nothing to complain about it. Radhika, you really have nothing to complain about. So I look at all these things, and then I look at the brighter side of life, and I'm like, okay, I need to go back and fight another way, and that's how it is.
So where you have your personal set of insecurities, right? So where does courage and confidence really kicks in? Like, how does it kick in?
So it's gotten better over the years. I think for me, sort of the big confidence was when the girl with the broken neck released, the video that released. I mean, I got messages from so many people, and I realized that everyone has their own set of insecurities and challenges. And it's open to talk about it, and if we can change someone's life positively with our story, then that's a great thing. And I think I realized that the more vulnerable you are, people will sort of relate to you, and it's kind of okay to be honest, and it's also the easiest way to be. Um, so I think that for me was a big change in my confidence, and the speaking has definitely helped. Because I used to be the kid who like you handed me a mic, I'm scared, I'm here. And now if you put me in front of 1,000 people and I'm royally ill, and I will love it. I will be the best version of myself on a stage with 1,000 people watching me. So I think that's the journey of courage and confidence.
So now we're talking about confidence and courage that you've gotten over the number of years. You were shy, and then the struggle that you've gone through personally. You've been rejected, you've been accepted. So now that you are building a team, you have built your team. What is the number one quality you look into when you're hiring someone or your existing employees, and what are the other three that matter the most?
Uh, I think the number one is hunger. The desire to do something, build something. It's a big word to use, but almost leave a legacy. The desire to get out of bed and be extraordinary. That hunger is like for me. I didn't even think about the question when you asked. That for me is the number one thing I do for people because you can get aptitude, but aptitude you just can't get. So I think for me, hunger, and I see hunger in the way someone talks and their energy in the like. I hate people in interviews who are sleepy. It irritates the hell out of me. So that's that. That's that. The other thing I look for is adaptability, the ability to handle change. Because I think you live in a world that's constantly changing. I'm someone who grew up with a lot of change myself. So I like to see adaptability quotient in people. I also like to see some amount of emotional maturity in people. Because if you're very, very volatile, then it's difficult to lead people. And I think the last thing is I like people who can think differently, who want to do something different, who think a little away from the mainstream, who don't take themselves too seriously, but who want to do something differently.
That's like the first time I've heard these three things from a CEO. Because I don't think they're on priority when anybody's interviewing us these days. So let's talk about let's talk about like ending this segment about how to be a boss lady. What are some like probably 2 to 3 tips you'd give to women who are starting their own startup these days, who are trying to be entrepreneurs and trying to make it?
One, have a lot of persistence and have sort of the real power to fight it out because it is going to take that. I think the line I say is that take your ego, put it in a glass like water, and then throw the glass and stamp all over it because that's the journey you're about to go on. So have a lot of persistence and don't give up. The second one is have a plan B because it is very important to have a plan B. It's glamorous to start a startup, but startups do fail, so have a plan B. That's very, very important. I think those are the two big ones. The third for all women is, find your own strengths and find your own weaknesses and work really hard on your. Everyone says improve your weaknesses. Figure out what is special about you and make the most of it because there is something that is special about each one of us. Make the most of that.
That is true. We need to be ourselves. We need to pursue our own uniqueness, I think. So now that we're done with this segment, we would talk about some normal advices or reflections of normal questions that our team had from you.
Yes.
So what were the moments when you really thought that being a woman was a disadvantage?
Look, there are periodic moments I have to say, like I'm on this board of mutual fund CEOs, and I'm the only woman, and I'm also much younger than most of them. I mean, my next oldest counterpart is about 45. I'm 36. So you sometimes don't fit in, but it's actually a huge advantage because you live in a world where everyone is like they're looking for something unique in people, and you already have that. I also think women are great bosses. They can be great bosses. They are naturally empathetic. They see that people side, they see the human side of people. So I've come to a point where I'm actually very happy about my gender, and if I had to do this again, I won't change it. And periodic there are those times when someone will make some stupid comment about your looks, or say something about you, and like I've learned to ignore it. And if the person is really obnoxious, I'll say something back.
So what's this one line that you would use to, give them a silent call and then move on? One thing that you'd be like, that this is unique, that this is what you use and it works.
Oh, God, I don't have a line. But I can be pretty sarcastic when I want to, and I can be pretty nasty when I want to. But if someone makes a comment about one's looks or something like that, I'm like, so would you make the same comment if I were a guy? Like if someone makes a weird comment about, I mean, that's what I do. It's what all of us would do. But I found people to be fairly friendly. Yeah, I think once you let loose, I found people to be fairly friendly. I have often told people, "Don't you dare call me a diversity candidate." Once in a while.
So, Radhika, during your entire professional life and your personal one as well, what was the most meaningful advice you've ever received and you'd like to tell everybody?
Be a constant, try to be better version of yourself every day. And someone told me this once that every individual is kind of a masterpiece, and every individual is a work in progress. So look at yourself and your own resume and say, okay, these are things I'm good at, but these are my weaknesses, or weaknesses or things that you've not had experience in. And try to fill those gaps in your resume with the different experiences. So if you haven't had experience managing a large team, do that. If you haven't had experience managing a stressful environment, collect experiences, don't collect degrees.
That's a good point. I think that is what makes us really an all-rounder person. We can do everything then. So, if you could go back in your life and redo something or do it a bit differently, what would it be?
I mean, I wish I had done more confidence when I was 12 or 13. Like, I was the most insecure person when I was 12 or 13. And I remember going to this American school in Nigeria where everyone was sort of much richer than me. And it was a constant exercise to try and fit in. And obviously, I wouldn't do that again. I mean, I don't have any regrets really. But I wish I was a far more confident person at the age of 12 or 13. I wish I had learned how to play a musical instrument, but I don't think I have any talent there. So I tried to play the piano, but that failed royally.
So, now that you're confident and you've owned it, right? What what really made a substantial impact on your life during those moments? I know it's small things that eventually add up, but it must have been one push that you took to go to that speaker session where you released A Girl with a Broken Neck.
So actually, what really worked for me is that before that speaker session, I was working with someone, and there was a training for our office. There were about 40 of us going through a class in storytelling. And if you guys haven't done training on storytelling, I highly recommend you do it. And I was sitting with a bunch of the top management of our company, and I realized that all these people who were CEOs were starting to tell personal life stories, and the way we were looking at each other was completely changing. And I realized that, like, even the top boss of the company has tears to shed and something to say. And I was like, okay, maybe why don't I just start saying it? So I actually told a version of The Girl with the Broken Neck at that training session. And I saw the sort of impact it had on people. And I was like, why can't I keep doing this at a much broader scale? And every time, after that released, I got a letter from Bangladesh, and there was this kid who has this broken kind of cheek, and he told me that because he had seen that video, he now has the courage to photograph himself with his broken cheek. And I was like, this is very cool. I mean, just by sharing one's own story, you can get 10 other people to share story. I believe the world is becoming an increasingly negative place, and more people need to just come out and spread smiles and spread happiness.
That is true. You have a very fine blend of being vulnerable and still owning it and having that fine blend of confidence as well. So you are like, still, I am pretty sure every day is like you're still trying to figure out a lot of things in your life. But during all the internal struggles and the external struggles, what does it take to exceed expectations?
I think it's really important, Sajal, to set high expectations. Again, this is something I tell women. I remember when I joined the mutual fund, we have uh, 44 mutual funds in India, and Edelweiss was ranked 37, I think. I mean, 37 out of 44 is pretty bad. Uh, and in my head, I was like, we have to be top 10. And that's a really high bar to set. And I mean, a lot of people have told me I'm crazy. Today, incidentally, just before this, I was told we now hit rank 17. Now, 17 is far from 10, but it's also a lot of progress from 37. So I try to set really, really ambitious expectations. I also don't have answers many times as to how I will get there. So I always say, you don't know how to get from 1 to 100, but you know how to get from 1 to 2. And you probably know how to get from 2 to 5. And by the time you're at 5, you can kind of figure out how to get to 10. And at 10, you'll be skilled enough to get to 20. And that's how life moves.
That's really insightful. Yeah, it's all about taking the baby steps. So, if you could sum it up about this, your professional life, right? What are the major traits you think that contributed to your growth?
I think the biggest thing for me, and as I said, it's a young journey. The biggest thing for me is adapting to change quickly, and I think that's something that I look for in people. But the ability to adapt to change quickly, and to make the best of opportunities that are thrown your way without wondering, okay, what is this going to lead me into? You can't predict too much, you can't plan too much, but you can say, okay, this is what I'm getting now. Let me just do the damn best job at the opportunity that's thrown my way. And then let's see from there.
So, I was just wondering that maybe our audience do not know about why did you get the tag, the girl with the broken neck. So let's maybe have that short story.
Say that again. I couldn't hear you.
Okay, so I was saying that maybe most of our audience are not aware of this. Why did you get this title of the girl with the broken neck? So let's have
So
that.
so it's not obvious. I do have like a weird kind of tilt in my neck. And I got this tilt because my mother had gestational diabetes. And so when I was born in Pakistan, I was born very overweight. I mean, some of you who are mothers, I was born 13 pounds, about 7.5, 8 kgs, which is like double the size of a normal baby. And so the nurse, I think, put me in an incubator in a weird odd position this neck. And we didn't discover it when I was a kid because I was so afraid. By the time I was in Nigeria, 12, 13, I lost weight. And then realized there's this thing. I was really horrible growing up because the kids would always make fun of me. They'd be like, oh, she's like that kid with a broken neck. That's what they called me. My brother used to call me the girl with a broken neck. In fact, I said this in the video also. A lot, I get photographed a lot, and so I travel a lot. So airport securities, even till day, like the security lady will ask me about my neck. Like, why does she care? I don't know. But now, like I tell her, I'm the girl with a broken neck. But it was something that bothered me throughout my childhood and teenage years because everyone kept making fun of the neck. And when I did my video, because it was so much about self acceptance and the journey of self acceptance, I said, why not just come out and say I'm the girl with the broken neck? And it's funny that the neck that I used to run away from all my life is now like the title.
So how did you accept that title? I think it comes. There are a lot of insecurities that we have, right? There are a lot of stigmas that are against not being the perfect model, not having the exact symmetry. There are a lot of things, and women get the wrong end of it, of the same stick. So like, what made you accept that title? I kept wondering whenever I read about you, the other probably it was like AKA the girl with the broken neck. So I was at first scared to call you that, but then I was like, she owns it, and maybe it's high time that we start, you know, accepting it as well. But what drove you to that point of self acceptance?
So when I did the talk, I did the talk for 500 odd people before the video release. And I was obviously nervous about doing the talk. But when I saw the reactions I got to the talk in the live audience, we were thinking about releasing the video. And I actually was the one who proposed the title, The Girl with a Broken Neck. I was like, I think this is what we should call it because that is what it is. And I said girl because I was like, we could have called it the woman with a broken neck too. But I was like, it's the story of a girl growing up with her insecurities. And I mean, we're all broken in some way or the other. Someone's neck is broken, someone's leg is broken, someone's too fat, someone's too thin, someone's too dark. I mean, women are constantly bloody judged for how they're. I'm just going to say it, right? This is like supposedly my biggest weakness since childhood. Let me just call it that, and hopefully the guy with broken cheek now can come out and talk about his broken cheek. It was a very easy decision for me. Once I saw those 500 people after my live talk, I was like, okay, it has to be the person.
So you started speaking, and it has been a ripple effect. Even I could feel your voice, your confidence resonating inside me when I heard that session. Using all the power and all the fame and all the attributes that you have today, what would you do today to make an impact or a larger impact on the society that we live in?
So I am 36, as I said. I want to work for, I don't know, 5, 7 more years in corporate India. I do eventually want to join government. I don't know when that will happen, whether I'll be 45 or whether I'll be 50. I don't know when it will happen. If you look at my role models, there are people like Nandan Nilekani who did a great job in private industry and then went on to use their time to shape policy in government. So that's my aspiration. As I said, I've always believed in having big aspirations and asking. That's what I want to work towards. So I want to make an impact in government. My dad was in government. He served the government of India. And I hope one day I get the opportunity to do that. I don't know if I will, but that's my hope.
So now that you have this aspiration, and one thing that's really important is again making yourself understood, and in the way that you're saying what you're saying gets accepted in the same manner as you said it. What is that one thing that you would make sure of so that it gets, the communication is straight?
So the one thing I'm doing, as I said, if I have this aspiration of working in government, I'm already in my current role, and my role allows me to do this, doing a lot of engagement with people in government. We launched India's first corporate bond ETF in partnership with Government of India last year. So I got 12 months of working with government, and I've been very vocal about voicing my aspirations and trying to get to know people in that space. And I'm hoping at some point life will throw me an opportunity and I'll be able to grab it.
It's like, people don't think about politics anymore because they think that, maybe this is not what's in it for us. So you are truly a source of inspiration for the women around you. So, on an ending note, what would you like to tell all the women and all the audience who are listening to you and are like totally impressed by what you just told us?
Now, so firstly, I want to thank you for having me do this. And I think there's just so much potential we have as ladies. And there are going to be days when people pull you down and you wonder why you're doing what you're doing. I think, and I've talked to so many women who are CEOs. I think no woman who rises and who's trying to make an impact has an easy journey. Try to find lots of each other to find help and inspiration. I don't believe women are mean to women. I think women are amazing to women. So try to find lots of support and just keep living to fight another day. I mean, that's what I try and tell myself. Keep living to fight another day and set really high aspirations. I really believe that if you aim for the stars, you have some shot of getting there. So don't stop aiming for the stars.
Thank you so much, Radhika, for taking out time for us and discussing the most realistic aspects of your life and how you've become what you are today from scratch to this level. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us. This was Radhika Gupta, and I hope you listen to us again. And it was really nice having you. Bye-bye.
Bye.